of remarkable people, see if they could become something more, see if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles that we never could. Phil Coulson died still believing in that idea, in hero. Well, it's an old-fashioned notion. There was an idea called the Avengers Initiative. The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people, see if they could become something more, see if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles that we never could. Phil Coulson died still believing in that idea, in hero. Well, it's an old-fashioned notion.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday. We're here joined with the one and only Ramsey Ramirez. What's going on, Ramsey?
Yo, what's up? How are y'all doing?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great.
So first things first, I want to appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Everything. I know you.
Really busy man.
Wait, should I mention that you were on vacation, or is that like off limits?
Nah, I mean you already did. So
How was it?
Needed it.
Did you enjoy it? How was it? Was the best part of it, or?
Yeah, I mean I got to swim with stingrays. That's pretty wild. Got to go snorkeling. We went to the Cayman Islands. We had already had it planned for a while, and yeah, it was a well needed vacation after months and months of planning and work. Planning the Comic-Con that just happened.
Very good. So we got some in the chat. We got the comic menu saying what's up.
What's up, Comic Menu?
We got Maggie.
Hello, Maggie. How are you doing?
We got JJ. He's not important.
What's up, Jay?
he's a third guy. And then we got Tristan Maldonado.
What's up, Tristan? How you doing? Hey, you can show me the bad ones too. I'm not.
I got you, bro.
Everybody's good here. Everybody's good here.
We're good right now, but I got you.
All right.
So we've got Faustino. What's up? Haters. That's funny, dude. We're talking about that.
Hey, Fausto there.
So swimming with the stingrays, bro. Did you get that Steve Irwin itch? I'm gonna teach you a lesson today.
Well, I mean, I did think I was gonna die. My fiance Marla loves the ocean. Loves she. I think her calling was marine biologist. So we always go snorkeling, wherever we can. And this time she wanted to, swim with stingrays, and I was like, man, the one way, or there's two ways I don't want to die, but the number one way, or maybe I don't know, they're pretty both up there, is by shark, and she keeps putting me in the ocean, dude. I'm just like, with a little thing, snorkeling thing.
I gotta ask, man, do you have insurance?
I do now.
It sounds like she's doing it for a reason, man. If you got some good insurance,
it's only a couple months old, so I do now. But yeah, you might be right there.
That's good. We got Del Guzman. Good job having to start with
Hello.
Ramsey.
Thank you, Del. I appreciate it. It was rough, and thank you for your support.
Yeah,
guys, we got more than Comic-Con going on around here, guys. No, I'm just kidding.
Where's it?
Right, we got to get rid of our Ultra Expo right now.
Ultra,
yeah.
Rebrand, yeah.
Rebrand, right?
there you go.
All right, Ramsey. So thank you for joining us. I usually like to just kind of start off, man. I mean, obviously, we're in that collective genre, right? Comic books, cards, stuff like that. I'll usually make my story quick because everyone here has probably already heard it. I usually like to say what got you into collecting, right? So, for me, I don't know. Do you remember that arcade in Far Nickelodeon?
Yeah.
So my dad was a security guard there for years, bro.
Oh wow, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, so I
a lot of fights over there, right?
Bro, all the time, bro. And I was 10. I thought this stuff was normal. They're just fighting, and I'm over here playing that Star Wars game and shit.
Every fight that was gonna happen in high school or middle school is I'll meet you in Nickelodeon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's crazy, bro. And from there, the prize guy would give my dad Charizard cards, which now are worth a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And so I would take these Charizard cards and I would sell it for money because I didn't have money, So I would take this Charizard card, sell it for $20, and boom,
Yeah.
And that's what got me into the collector world. Fred, what about you? What got you there?
I've always worked retail, and I worked for Walmart for about 6-7 years, and I would always see These guys come in at 6 in the morning, and I was an overnight manager, and they'll bug me for Hot Wheels. They always
Yeah.
wanted me to bring out the pallets,
Treasure hunts.
Yeah, treasure hunt, supers, and all that. And then one of the guys decided to show me, like, hey man, look, watch, if you see this little goat symbol, it's a super. If it's a regular symbol, it's a treasure hunt. And this is what they sell for. So like, I started like looking up to it. I'm like, man, I'm like, you could get a $1 car, sell it for 80, 70, $60.
Yeah.
And I started slowly collecting Hot Wheels, and then you end up finding different things. So like I started off vendoring in those I think it was those events that were in the libraries. I think they were Pete Martinez events. And I started vendoring there, and I started doing pure Hot Wheels. So I would do Hot Wheels and some Marvel Legends. And then the guy next to me started selling Funkos, and I started just jumping in every single thing that was moving up. And then later on, I ended up getting David and my brother involved. And that's how we ended up becoming the collectors.
Nice.
Yep.
So, and then
Oh,
we got-
you want to know my story?
yeah.
Yep. I want to see how Ramsey started it.
The comment section's hot, bro. You're popular, man. It's like they know you or something.
So I grew up in Sullivan City, and the only thing there is to do in Sullivan City is explore the woods. And we would go to town. We're gonna go to town, once every few weeks. And so I'd tag along with my mom, and as a reward, she would get me, like a comic book or a toy, Back then, this was the 80s, so the GI Joes were like $2, $2.50 each. Comics were 75 cents, 50 cents, pretty cheap. And so I got to pick. Sometimes if they didn't have the GI Joes that I wanted, or they didn't have any GI Joes, or Transformers or whatever it was, I'd pick up a comic book, or at that time they had like grab bags that had like, multiple comics in there. And so I'd read a story. Sometimes it would stay to be continued, and then I'd never figure out what had happened, because I didn't know where to get comics, And then I discovered that some gas stations had them nowhere near Sullivan. I think the closest one was in Mission. It was a Maverick Market on Conway, and at this point it was probably already the early 90s. And then heading to school every morning, we would stop sometimes to get breakfast tacos and stuff. My mom was an assistant principal at La Jolla, so we would stop and get some breakfast tacos at like an Aces store, and they had comics there. And I remember specifically the first Gambit was there, and picked that one up. I had already been reading X-Men for a while, but the only thing I could get my hands on were X-Men Classics, which are the reprints. Till one of my friends said, "Oh, you've never been to a comic store?" I was like, "What? There's stores devoted to this?" And at that point, it was like, I don't know. It was my first comic book store purchase was at Myth, and it was Amazing Spider-Man 320 something or 330 something. Right past the McFarlane run, it was Eric Larson's run, and Venom was jumping at him, and I walked in, I was like, what the hell? There's comic stores. That's insane, I want to live in McAllen one day, And so after that, all my allowance, whatever, like cutting yards, recycling cans, whatever I could do was to buy comics. And then sports cards as well. I was hardcore into like Pro Set and Upper Deck baseball, things like that. And then I discovered some shows that would happen. There were indoor flea markets at the Villa Real, which is now the Harley Davidson. And so I'd go there, and one of my teachers, Mr. Jimenez, would sell comics there. And so, then I was like, hey, I can sell stuff. And so I started selling some of my stuff every once in a while to get money to buy more things. And that's kind of what it was, really. Comic books, Transformers, cartoons, and G.I. Joe, He-Man, all that stuff kind of got me into pop culture, and here I am. I mean, and my senior picture, I had a Spider-Man shirt, dude. I'll put that up on my Facebook one of these days. But yeah, I was a big nerd. It's no surprise that that I do what I do to anybody I went to school with.
That's awesome. So mostly comic books is what you got your first start in. So, what was your? Do you remember your first sale where you were like, "Damn, I made a lot of money. Like, it was a good profit, good turnaround." Did you break even or?
I I think the first things I sold were Nintendo games that I had traded for other stuff to be able to go and buy more comics from Mr. Jimenez, who was a couple tables down. And one of the games I do remember selling that I had already finished was the Friday the 13th Jason game for Nintendo, for the original Nintendo. And I remember I sold it for $20 and I was like, wow. I went over there like, what do you got? What do you got? And then later down the line started playing Magic. I was probably like year 2 or 3 of Magic is when I started getting into Magic the Gathering and playing that.
Very good, very good, very good. So, with all of that, given the fact that you did all that, what was that turning point where you kind of turned like your passion into an actual business? Like, did you have a 5-year plan? Were you just kind of winging it, or
Oh,
what kind of pushed you that way? Like, did you walk out
winging
of your
it.
day job and say, you know what, f this, I'm done, or what
Winging
happened?
it and literally, yeah. I was so I went to school for graphic design and advertising. I was an art major, and about halfway through, I was like, "How am I gonna make money?" Like artists don't make money. So went, that's when my teacher was like, "Dude, graphic design," and um, so I went into kind of that field, and I worked for several advertising agencies, through the uh, early 2000s, and then in 2004, um, got in a little argument with my boss at the time, and I was like, man, I'm gonna go solo, and so I quit, walked out, um, printed some business cards, and said, hey, I'm doing graphic design, and I walked to every store in McAllen, knocking on doors, handing out business cards. Hey, if you need a logo, hey, if you need flyers, if you need a website, like any of that kind of stuff, any video editing, anything that I had learned to do in the years in advertising. Um, I started doing that, and so that led me into, and I had a good amount of clients, but I was an artist. I was a terrible businessman, so I was also in a band, and just business was a hard thing for me to crack. Like as an artist, you see things one way, and to be a business person, you just kind of have to like flip it and see it a different way. And I was terrible at billing. I was like, oh yeah, I'll bill you later, and then I'd forget, And obviously the clients weren't gonna be like, hey, well, I had one client, dude, Eden Pools, and he would bug me to come pick up my checks. Hey, he's like, dude, it's been 2 weeks, you haven't picked up your check. Get over here and get it. Come on, get your shit together. So can I say? Can I say?
You're
Uh,
good, bro.
We're good. We're good.
all
We're
right,
good.
all right. And so I loved Chris. He was amazing. Um, and but yeah, man, I mean, clients weren't lining up to tell me to go pick up the checks, right? And then by the time I'd remember, all of a sudden they're hard to find, and anyway, stupid mistakes that you learn from. But that led into me uh doing a couple magazines, and from there eventually into uh, comics and stuff like that. But yeah, I just basically quit my job one day, and I was like, I'm out. I thought what he had, said was unfair, and we're fine now. But back then I was real offended, man, and I walked out and I left and um, started just freelancing wherever I could, picking up clients wherever I could. It was rough. It was very rough for a long time, but yeah, especially when you're making stupid mistakes.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, learning opportunities, right? Learning
Hey,
opportunities.
there you
So,
go. That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
so, so you were with a partner, friend, another business, and you split off. So you did the advertising graphic design before Kaboom Comics, or
Oh yeah,
what was
way
that?
before. Yeah, this was 2004. Kaboom didn't come until like 2010.
Okay, okay.
So yeah,
When
2004
did
is
you
when I
decide
spoke out on my
about the
own.
whole kaboom? Like, what made that become an actual reality?
So I had an office for um, my advertising, and then I'd also do a magazine called Magazine X, and we had a whole office, and well, most of it was empty. I would only use like my little 10 by 10, 12 by 10 office in the back, and the whole front area was completely empty. And so at that point, I had already met Marla, and I was like, hey, let's, it was the middle of the night, dude. It was like 2 a.m. And and I was a night owl, and I was like, hey, like, let's go to Denny's and let's try to figure out what I can do with the rest of this office. There's got to be something I can do. And you want me to talk about MagX a little bit before I get into that?
I mean, it's up to you, man. I mean, it's all good info, man. Whatever you want to put out there.
So
it's part of the journey.
Everyone's got the notepads out already. They're getting everything ready.
Well, yeah, don't do as I did, because that's gonna be a long road. Yeah,
different times.
It's gonna be a long road. But so what I did was I was doing advertising. Then I did a magazine called Magazine X. Before that, I did another magazine called Weird Magazine with a friend. We ended up splitting up. I went and started MagX. We were doing Weird was half aliens and conspiracies, half rock and roll. So all the rock stuff was me. All the aliens and conspiracies was my friend Russell. He still does it in Austin. And I think he has something called the Texas Hemp Reporter right now, and he's has an awesome show. But yeah, I was like one day, like, we're printing some crazy stuff, dude. And one day I felt like these black SUVs were following me, dude. And we had just printed.
Like, I'm out.
Yeah, we had just printed some kind of article that was comparing like the Bush administration to, Revenge of the Sith or something, or what, something like that. And I'd be on the phone and he'd be like, "Hey, did you hear that clicking on the phone?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, our phone's tapped." And I was like, "What, dude?" And he made me so freaking paranoid, dude. And and then these black SUVs were weaving, following me from Weslaco. I lived in Weslaco with my band. We had a band house where we would like all jam and party and hang out. And I was like, "Dude, that's it, dude. I'm out. I can't do this anymore, dude. All these conspiracies, they're making me crazy, dude." And so I'm you keep whatever it is. I don't want it under my name. I'm gonna go and do this other thing. So I did MagX. Basically just took all the local music, local art, and put it into a magazine. Tried to sell ads for it, and it ran for like I don't know, 2005 to like 2012, something like that, like 70 issues maybe, something like that. And it started just interviewing local bands. Our first band that we interviewed was a band called Warrior, and then now they're called Black Torah. Razor Dave, he's an amazing guitarist. They were on the cover, and then we started interviewing, other bands. Then all of a sudden, touring bands agents were contacting us and saying, "Hey, like, Deftones is passing through. Do you want to interview them?" We're like, "Yeah." "Hey, Hell Yeah is passing through. Do you want to interview Vinnie Paul?" "Yeah." "Hey, Skrillex is going to be, over there in South Powder. Do you want to interview him?" "Yeah." So they started offering us bigger interviews like that. And then I'd fill it with like pop culture nonsense. Me and my best friend Jess were comic geeks. So there was all kinds of comic jokes and movie, trivia and all kinds of stuff like that. So anyway, I was doing that. I was doing advertising as well on the side. And then I had all this unused space, and we went to Denny's, and we were sitting there, and we're like, maybe like a cell phone store, that Cricket stuff is blowing up. I think it was Cricket at the time. No, it was something else. I don't know.
It was Pocket, bro. It was Pocket.
Maybe, yeah, that's the one. And I was like, maybe we do that in there. And then Chris Ponce was at Denny's, right? And the Average Boys podcast. Yeah. So really, you the whole valley owes a debt to Chris, because it kind of spiraled from there. Mm-hmm. But we would hang out. He was an awesome dude. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, we're here to try to figure out what to do with that office. Like, we have all that unused space in the front, and I'm just holed up in my little office in the back. Like, what can I do to make some, like, extra income to make sure the rent is paid and all that stuff. And he's like, excuse me, he's like, well, dude, you love comics, open a comic store. And I was like, oh my God, Chris, you are right. That's what I need to do. And so went home, researched it, took about 6 months maybe to asked him to sing a snippet of the song. It's been a while since I could. And then we ended up researching it. Well, I ended up researching it, and I had lost like half of my comic books in a divorce. And they were like in, I don't know, my ex-father-in-law's shed or something. And then I had half of them at my mom's house stashed. So I went and picked those up, and then I tried to pick up the other ones, and they kept making excuses. And I think she had probably sold them to Myth. If I'm being honest, I don't know where they ended up, but I never got them back. That was all my Amazing 300s, all the, first Gambits, all that kind of stuff, first Deadpools, all the really good ones, right?
I'd be so upset.
Yeah, and so anyway, but I was able to. I think I had like 12 long boxes of comics that I'd collected over the years, and I, took them to the store and, opened some accounts, and I was like, let me try this, and man, was it a learning process. I thought, I was like, man, this is gonna be the easiest job ever. I'm gonna read comics all day. People come in, I'll sell them some, and it ends up that, especially at that time, it was hard to sell comics, and it's funny that I loved X-Men, and so I'd order a bunch of X-Men, and then they wouldn't sell.
One of those, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, so I'd have stacks of X-Men. I was like, oh man, like what am I doing wrong? And I was ordering all the things that I thought people wanted, right? And I didn't have enough of a customer base to have a good idea of what people actually wanted. And so it took a while. It took a lot of months of basically just burning money, dude, just throwing it away, things going into long boxes that weren't selling and trying to, figure it out. It's definitely, as you guys probably know really well, it's part art and part science, getting these things. And then with comics, especially with comics, you never know what's gonna sell and what isn't. You have some educated guesses, but sometimes you spec on the wrong things and you order a bunch of stuff and then you're out, whatever that cost was. And once they go into those boxes, the chances of them selling are like 20%, compared to when they're on the wall and people can see them. But little by little, we figured it out.
Have you ever had like that one purchase where you really, really messed up? You bought so many of one thing.
Oh yeah, that was the whole first year of Kaboom. I just wasn't learning my lessons, dude. I just I was like, man, but if people only knew how good it was, they would buy it, people didn't care. So, but yeah, there was a lot of those. But I also got lucky along the way, and it was a lot of X-Men that I was buying, because when I was growing up in the 90s, it was all about the X-Men, right?
Yeah, animated series, yeah.
Yeah, and so they had just rebooted the X-Men to like issues 1. I don't know. He was fighting They were fighting Dracula and stuff, but those weren't. They were good, but people just didn't care about X-Men at that point. Plus, why were they gonna come to me? When there was, Myth was there. They had been there for a long time. They had all the customer base. But little by little, people started coming. I figured, okay, well, if I can't get the people who already read comics, I'm gonna make new comic readers, And so that became the pivot. Is like, how do I get more people into comics? So all those extra ones, started giving them away. Hey man, try this one out. This is good. Hey, let's give some to schools. Let's give some to the library. Let's, try to get these into people's hands with maybe like a business card, and maybe people will start, coming in. And that did help. Same thing when we went into Magic the Gathering and card games like that. I didn't want to go to Myth and say, "Hey, everybody, like, don't play there. Come play at my place."
Yeah.
So instead, because that's how you make enemies. I totally believe in karma, not as some cosmic, luck thing or cosmic, thing that's like looking over you, making sure you're doing the right thing. But if you do something bad to somebody, they're gonna want to do something bad to you, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's I never went and tried to steal players from anywhere. I started training people and showing them how to play Magic. And me and my best friend would play, and then other people were like, "What are you playing?" "Oh, well, check it out. It's Magic." And then, people who had already retired out of Magic got them back in, and then got their friends in. And by the time you knew it, I had, like, on Friday nights, 30 players or something. And then, as I guess, no good deed goes unpunished. I guess a friend of mine opened up right next door to me, and one of the guys I hired was friends with both of us. And he started telling everybody, "Hey, don't come here next Friday, go over there." And I was like, "What are you doing? You need a job?" And anyway, and the one thing that I always said I wouldn't do, obviously people did it to me. But whatever, that's how it goes. And so the community became even more split, and then, eventually we were able to build it back up, and they're no longer around. But it's one of those things that I didn't want to go about it the wrong way. I didn't want to make enemies. I wasn't in this to put anybody out of business. I just wanted to read comics all day, play Magic all day, and hopefully sell a few comics enough to pay the rent. That was the idea.
It's true, because like me and Fred always had this concept when we went into business. Like, we always thought of everything kind of like a wedding cake, right? So
Yeah.
which coincidentally, because you're getting married, right? Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah.
So,
We haven't
like,
set a date, but yeah. Thank you.
So we know that it's like a wedding cake, right? So when you go to a wedding, right, you're not taking the whole damn cake. You just take enough for you and then the people that are around you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like splitting up a pie. So me and Fred said, we don't want to get greedy. Healthy competition's good. It's good for the customer, right? If I'm going to buy comics, I'm going to go over here. If I'm going to buy pops, I'm going to go over here. If I'm going to buy graded cards, I'm going to go over here.
Yeah.
And if you're supporting each other, the healthy businesses that are not toxic are going to support the community itself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great way to look at it. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I think I did it well. I mean, I tried not. Apparently, there's some haters out there, but I tried not to. I tried not to step on too many toes, but maybe inadvertently I did. But for sure, like, I never went after anybody else's customer base. Like, people discovered us and decided to, shop with us, or we tried to create our own players or our own readers and cultivate more people to get into this, and that kind of carried on into, Comic Cons and all that stuff.
So we had someone to come and say, "How did you come up with the name Kaboom?"
Fausto, what's up, dude? How did I come up with the name Kaboom? So I was, designing. So we had left Denny's, right? The next day I was sitting at my desk, a graphic designer, advertiser, thinking like, what can, I call this thing, right? And I was like, it's gotta be like a sound effect or something. And then my friend Roland had one called Cyber Comics. I don't know if y'all remember that one. It was on University by the tile place. I forgot what the tile place was called. And he had a store, and it was called Cyber Comics. And then he had a little blam, at the end, right? And maybe that subconsciously, kind of resonated. But I always thought, I was like, what would be a good name for a comic store? And I thought about all the sound effects, snicked, or thwip, or, things like that. And I had these fonts that I had bought. I wanted to make comics for so long, and I had bought these fonts called Comic Craft a long time ago. And one of the sound effects was kaboom, right? And it's like ka-boom, with a lot of O's or something. Yeah. And I was like, maybe kaboom. And then I was like, maybe I can make little bombs. And I started creating the little logo. And it looks way different than the original one. The original was pretty bad. But eventually it became something cool by the time we opened. And yeah, I think I was supposed to open in February, and then it just took longer to get merchandise, and I ended up opening, um, I think July 7th, 2010. I think that's the date that I opened.
Was there
Nice.
any like
Oh
runner
man,
up
it's
names?
another anniversary is coming up. Wow. Was there what?
Like any runner up names besides Kaboom? Like was there another one that was
No,
gonna take
no.
over?
Once
It was always
I
Kaboom.
got on that one, I think,
You're like, oh, that's it.
I might have thought of Ramsey's comics, and I was like, that's generic as hell. Let me just put my name on everything. So I was like, no, let me try to, I don't know, make it I guess in advertising you want to try to make it something that people are gonna remember. And so I was thinking like kaboom, and it's an explosion, and it's this and that, and it's a sound effect, that you see in comics. Maybe that'll give it some branding. And then I ran with that. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. So you started off in Kaboom. You got the ball rolling. So when you went from that Pecan location, right, to 10th, how was that transition to there?
Scary, dude. So that pecan location was good to me. Before it was Kaboom, it was the advertising agency. I'd been there already for several years. And I guess the opportunity came when I saw that place was for rent. And it was like an art studio. And the lady, I think she was moving back to Florida or something. And so I called the landlord, and he's like, you need to do it. And I was like, man, I'm scared, dude. It's triple the rent. He's like, but it's 10th Street. And I was like, it's triple the rent. He's like, but it's 10th Street, you know? And at that point, we had already opened the Westlaco store the year before that.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't have to pay myself this year. I can, again, because there was many years where at the end of the year I made $400. On a good year I made 4,000 off of that. But then I was also doing websites and all the other stuff to kind of, keep me afloat. So decided to make the jump, and it ended up being really good. It was so stressful because the place was kind of run down, and it had like a low ceiling, like those I guess ceiling tiles like in the schools and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're all beat up. And my friend's like, dude, just rip that whole thing down, dude, and paint the ceiling black. And I was like, man, that looked cool. And then we did that, and it was like all wires, and it was so crazy. We had to redo all the electrical when we did that, and I'm like, oh my god, what did I do? and so it took like an extra 3 months, 4 months, I think, of construction and extra work, and friends, buddies pitching in who are electricians, like my friend Frank. He's an electrician, and he's like, man, I'll help you out, and he helped me. He's like, his exact words, I'll help you polish this turd, and he did. And so I kind of wanted to create a temple to like pop culture, to everything that I loved, that I grew up with, almost like a museum. And it's still a work in progress, but that's why we have like a life-size Han in carbonite,
Yeah.
and we try to have like big pieces of art and things like that in there to just, make it a cool place, and one of the best rewards I remember was a little kid walking in the grand opening, and he was like, wow, and his eyes were so wide. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I didn't have as a kid, a place to go like that. And so yeah, and that was our move to 10th Street, and then it ended up being the right move. We basically tripled our business, but also not just tripled our rent, but all the other bills tripled, and it was a learning process as well. Like how much of what to order. All of a sudden, we're running out of stuff, and there's a certain amount of time that it takes for you to get new stuff. Sometimes it's months, sometimes it's weeks, and we're like, what's in stock? There's nothing in stock. Oh no, what are we gonna do? So it was definitely a learning process, and a very scary thing, but I do thank my landlord for like kind of pushing me to do it. He was like, you got to do it, you'll see the difference. And we did. And not that I was making a ton of money. Maybe at the end of the year I was making 8,000 or 9,000, but I had employees, they were getting paid. There was something happening, and I was like, well, I have this other stuff to keep me afloat. I can afford to hire help, and that was one of the main things. Right now, I employed like 24 people, and I think sometimes I was like, fire them all and keep all that money. No, I don't, because you really can't like, do it all yourself. At a certain point, you need help, and you need the right people helping you. And I have some really awesome, dedicated people, including Marla, including Roy, Isaac, Andrew, Pat, all the people that help out at Kaboom. They're amazing, and like it would not be there if I was just trying to do it all myself. So it was one of those things where, yeah, I could pay myself and keep all the money, and then be busy there all day, and not be able to do anything else, or I can find a team who's as passionate about it as I am, and make sure they're getting paid, and and try to build it into a bigger thing. And for a long time, it didn't make money. I don't think I made like a steady check until 2021 from Kaboom. Honestly, it took that long. Like, what is that, 11 years? But at that point, I had multiple employees, and a lot of other stuff happening, multiple locations. But luckily, like I said, the advertising background, building websites, making logos, all that stuff is what kept me afloat. Oh, for a while I was a teacher too. I was teaching at IDEA. I was teaching art.
Nice.
And for middle school, and which was an amazing experience. But I was doing too many things. I couldn't do them all.
They don't like, how many tell those kids they stop at Kaboom Comics?
Well, they were like in Mission, but they all know they stop by now, dude, and they're these big ass kids now, and they're like, there's one guy walked in, dude, a few months ago, and he's like, Ramirez, and I was like, oh, this guy wants to kick my ass, dude, like what? Like, he's a big guy. You remember me? I was like, oh man, what did I do? I was your student in 6th grade. I was like, what? Whoa, and so they come in every so often. And say hi, and yeah, I had the best group of art students, man, for those 2.5 years that I was teaching. It was amazing, and I'm glad I get to see them. They know where to find me.
Right, that's awesome. So when you went to Kaboom Comics, what made you go into the games? Because you expanded the rest of that building, right? You went to the back part of it. So how did that come across, or what?
So we had always been into the gaming aspect of it. We just never really had the room. Like we you'd go, and anybody who played at Kaboom and McAllen, the little one, the original, once you get more than 20 people in there, it started getting hot and started getting stinky. You know what I mean? And it was just such a confined space. The aircon couldn't heat, cool things fast enough. And then we moved to this other area, and we made that back corridor into a gaming area. And then that quickly filled up. I think we could seat like 40 people. And then people had to stand, and people, there was no room anymore. And Roy was like, hey, man, like, we need to give the gaming area a bigger footprint. And I'm like, yeah, I know how, right? So we ended up trying to make more room for product in the front, expanding the product selection and stuff like that. But that didn't solve the problem of having a place for people to game. And then the pandemic hit, and when I originally rented that place, they offered me the building in the back. And I told my landlord, I was like, nah, that's too much, dude. That's too much. I can't do that. He's like, you got to do it. No, I can't, dude. I can't. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to make it here, much less with a bigger spot in the back. Well, the pandemic hit, and there was a place there that had like a party rental space where they would have like a jumpy thing. What do they call them? The little bouncy houses.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a little stage, and they would have like, parties there for kids. Well, over the pandemic, there was no parties. And so I told the landlord, I was like, hey, like, is that place still for rent? And he was like, no, like, the pandemic's going to end and those people are going to come back or whatever. And I was like, okay. And then maybe like 3 weeks later, he's like, hey, it's available. And I was like, what? He's like, do you want it? And I was like, oh man, I hope he didn't kick these people out, right? But it ended up that, they just couldn't open up. You know how a lot of businesses, especially social things like that, you know, couldn't be open. And so I was talking to Roy, and I was like, dude, like, it's now or never. And he's like, dude, like, this is a probably not a smart idea. There's a pandemic. People can't get face to face and play. And I was like, yeah, but it's got to end at some point. So I talked to the landlord. I was like, screw it, I'm gonna try it, and so we jumped in it, and and it was another turd in need of polishing. Hey Frank, my electrician friend. Hey Frank, guess what? He's like, what?
We're doing it again.
We're doing it. He's like, no. I was like, yeah. He's like, hey man, I'm there for you, bro. So over several months, everything got rewired. We foamed the top, to save on electricity. Painted the whole thing black. Since our colors are yellow and black, so we painted it yellow and black. And hired a guy, a friend of mine. Shout out to Tinta de Guerra. He does like murals and stuff, and he painted the kaboom bombs outside, on the walls. And then we had a gaming place, but it was a pandemic, so so we filled it with product. I think we put up like plexiglass, made people wear masks, and people were mad about that, but I just didn't want to get shut down at that point. That was sometime in like 2021, when we opened. It was early 2021, and then little by little word started spreading, and we have probably seating for like 130, 140 people, something like that.
Yeah, I've walked in there before, man. It gets packed,
yeah,
man.
it gets packed. The air cons work most of the time. There's two of them, so it's not like old Kaboom where it's stinky, like and yeah, it's kind of the same concept as Kaboom McAllen is building, like a that sacred spot, with all the stuff you love. But this is just the other stuff I love, and I have a lot of hobbies. So so yeah, that's how that came about. It was just right place, right time. It could have been the wrong place at the right time, but the motto I have is you work it till it works. And if you give up, I mean, so many people around me were like, hey, you got to give up Kaboom, you gotta sell it. And people were offering me, hey man, I'll give you 20,000 for Kaboom. And I'm like, psh, I got like $50,000 worth of product in there, I can't sell it. But it's definitely worth more than that. And I just never wanted to sell it, despite all the people around me are like, hey man, like you're beating a dead horse, you gotta let it go. But I just said I'm gonna work it till it works, and I surrounded myself with good people, make sure they got paid before myself. And now it's at a point where, okay, cool, like I can make money, and I don't even have to be there all the time. I mean, obviously if I was there all the time, I'd make all the money, right? And I mean, it's not like millions or nothing, right? But but I get paid, and I don't have to be there often. I go check in, a couple times a day. How are things going? Hey, this is an idea. What are we doing here? What are we doing for this? New movie that's coming out, or whatever's happening, in the pop culture world. And then I'm out working on other stuff, conventions, and all my other millions of hobbies.
That's true. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what we're going to roll into next. So I mean, obviously with your background, right, in the advertising and everything. So what made you start doing your first con? Because if I remember correctly, it was the HorrorCon was the first con you did, right? The South Texas HorrorCon?
Yes.
So what got you into that, or what was
we had been, me and my best friend Jess had been going to conventions basically since the 90s. I think the first one I went to was a Wizard World in Chicago. We saved up with I guess at that time the new owner of McAllen Comics. I think his name was Lewis, and he was going to Chicago. He's like, hey, you want to tag along? Just pitch him for gas and hotel, and we'll go. And Mike Turner from Witchblade's gonna be there. Joe Mad from Battle Chasers. Humberto Ramos from Crimson at the time. Now he's known for Spider-Man and a lot of other things. Mike Mignola. I don't know how you Mignana,
Mignogna.
Migno. No, not Vic Mignogna.
Mike's there.
Mike, the creator of Hellboy, however you say his name, was gonna be there. So, um, we and I wanted to go and like show my portfolio to editors, at Marvel and DC and all these places, because I wanted to draw comics, dude. That's what I wanted to do. This is the '90s, and so we would go to all these conventions. We'd see the 501st there. We'd see, the I forget what the GI Joe group is called that have all the awesome GI Joe costumes, and we were talking, me and Jess at Kaboom, and I was like, man, like I really want to go to a convention. And he's like, dude, why don't we do one here? And I was like, well, because at the last advertising agency I worked for, basically, my boss would throw me into every single position, right? Like, he's like, hey, I'm going to fire this girl. Now you're going to do her thing, whatever she does. I was like, oh, shoot. Okay.
Thanks.
Oh man, I fired the video editor. Now you got to edit the videos too. I was like, oh, okay. Hey, I'm doing this event, and now you're an event coordinator. I was like, oh, okay.
All right.
And so we, the first event I did with them was like a concert called Valley Palooza. It was in Harlingen. A lot of bands played, and then the second one we did was at the Pepsi Park. It was like in Sherryland or something, and we had Stone Cold Steve Austin there. At the time, and he was signing autographs with them, but it was more of it was, I guess, do y'all remember something called the South Texas Scorcher?
I remember hearing about it.
Okay, it was like a concert slash car show slash slash,
Everything.
and I was always running the stages at those, so I kind of learned event coordination. Like he would just like say like, you need to do this, and I had to learn. And so a lot of those, then he brought down like My Chemical Romance and Yellow Card and all these emo bands as well. So Slick Shoes, and so he was constantly doing concerts and stuff, and I was always like involved, as like one of the event, managers, basically. So I learned kind of a little bit of that, but it really didn't pertain to the con world necessarily. But I was like, how hard can it be? Right, it was real hard.
You're like, little did I know.
Little did I know. And so I went to the convention center, and I was like, hey, I want to do a convention. At the time, my friend, appreciate you sharing your story and being transparent. I've been told a few times to give up Riddle Me This Collectibles because it's too much work, and being a teacher, it's practically impossible. But it's interviews like this that give me hope and that extra push that I need to keep going. Awesome, Jay Ree. Yes, you have to push through, and it's not, I don't know, maybe it's easy for some people. It was never easy for me, but you just got to work it, till it works. And as long as that takes, but you also got to be smart about it, So make sure you're making the right decisions, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, but maybe don't listen to me because, or maybe do. I don't know. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong.
Selective.
Man, I hope I didn't give him the worst advice ever. And now his whole family's gonna be like blacklist him and stuff. 'Cause he did. Anyway, no, I mean if it's what you want to do, it's what you want to do, and you just got to find a way to make it work, and you got to be smart about it, and that's really all there is to it. If it's 16-hour days, it's 16-hour days. If it's holding 2 other jobs down to make sure your employees get paid, it's holding 2 other jobs down, But anyway, back to HorrorCon. So my friend Mark had at the time was doing something called OmniCon, and it was in the I think in the hallways of the convention center. He would have it in the hallways and the small rooms on the side, right? And I told him, I was like, hey man, like I'm gonna do an event. And he's like, hey man, if you pay me, like I'll help you, right? I'll help you with the celebrities or whatever. I was like, cool, but I want to do it like in, the expo halls. He's like, you want to do it expo style? And I was like, yeah. He's like, probably not a good idea. I was like, well, I'm full of bad ideas, so let's go. And so, paid him maybe like, I don't know, $800, $1,000 or something like that. And he helped me by, I think, driving. She was the girl from True Blood around, and picking her up and making sure like she was okay. And then I hired another guy to help me, take care of Danny Trejo, and then so on and so forth, and uh, ended up doing HorrorCon, and it was hard. I had to, in order to be able to do it, I had to sell enough booths to afford it, and there was, I don't know, 50 booths that needed to be sold at like $300-$400, and halfway to the show, or not even halfway, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to the show, I still had like 20 booths unsold, and because I would go knock on any business that I could. I'd be like, hey, I have this thing called HorrorCon, and well, what's that? What can I do there? Well, you set up a table and a booth and you sell stuff, like a flea market. Well, kind of, yeah, but these people are here to meet these celebrities and blah blah, and I turned down left and right, but some people were like, hey, this sounds pretty cool, and it started there. I was getting close to the end of the show, and I don't think I've ever told this to anybody outside of my immediate family, but I was still down, like $10,000 before the show. And I was like, how am I gonna, like, people don't want to buy the booths. How am I gonna do this? And so I talked to my family, my two sisters and my parents, and I was like, hey, if you lend me some money, whatever it is, and this thing works, like, I'll double it. If it doesn't work, like, I'll do whatever I have to. I was teaching, I was doing whatever, like, I'll pay you off, in a couple years, worst case. But I think this is gonna work. And I had already spent all my money on, like, all the money that I had raised and all my savings on, like, Machete. We had Danny Trejo. He was one of the main celebrities. Oh, actually, check it out before I keep going. Is there a time limit on this thing?
Nah, bro, you good.
All right. So that's the first poster. It was like, Kim Bauer, Danny Trejo, the girl from The Crow, Ernie Hudson, T-Dog from The Walking Dead,
Nice.
and other people as well, a bunch of like horror people and stuff. So and so I had to pay the convention center. Like, all these bills were popping up, so my parents and my sisters were each able to lend me like $1,500 each. And I think my parents lent me $2,000, and then each of my sisters lent me $1,500. They just took a chance, and on me, and which I really do appreciate my family for that. And then I was still down $5,000, dude. And it comes back to one of my clients, Eden Pools. He had called me over. He's like, hey man, I'm putting together this brochure. I need your help. Can you come work in my house and let's knock it out? I was like, yeah. So I need all the money I can get right now. So let's go. So it was a Saturday. I was over there, working for like 4 or 5 hours. And at the time I would charge like $50 an hour for graphic design. And I think I worked for like 4 hours. And he was talking to me. He's like, well, what about the show? And I was like, well, yeah. Well, how are you doing? You have enough money for it? I was like, almost there, like short about $5,000 from being there. But I think, there's 2 weeks. Like, I think I'll be able to make it. And he's like, okay, cool. And then so I did the work. And he's like, how much is it? I was like, 4 hours, so like $200. And so he's like, okay, let me get you a check. And he brings me a check for $5,200. And friggin' great guy, dude. He's no longer with us, but I love that guy. And he's like, hey, I know you're gonna succeed. Just pay me back after the show. I know you'll be good for it. And then I had the money. Miraculously, I had the money. Nice. So it was full speed ahead at that point. 2 weeks before the show, and we had a pretty good turnout. I think it was like 1,500 people, 1,500 for the first show, and we it was a success. I didn't make a ton of money, but I made money. I didn't lose money. Everyone's like, oh, you're gonna lose money for the first 5 years, and I was like, oh man, it's gonna suck.
Not today.
But I made enough money to double what I promised, you know. So my sisters got 3,000 each back. My parents got 4,000 back. And then I was able to pay Chris back those $5,000 a couple weeks later. And I still had some money to, you know, hopefully do another one, you know, a year later. And that ended up being HorrorCon 2013.
Nice.
And that's how it happened, man. I mean, if, you know, without the support of my family, you know, it wouldn't have happened. I would have been at the tail end. And a lot of, you know, I'm sure you heard this from a lot of other cons, you know, that, you know, they're about to happen and there's not enough money and it doesn't happen. You know, it's happened a lot here in the Valley with other promoters, you know.
Absolutely.
Where it's just, you know, you think you can do something. And so I guess at that point I vowed, I was like, okay, man, I'm not spending any of this freaking money. Like, I'm going to put it aside, you know, for the next one so that I can potentially make, you know, a living off of this and keep doing this. And so, yeah, that went towards 2013. At that point, it was a little bit easier. Still had to go out and knock on doors and try to get people to buy booths. And people were still like, what is this crazy thing you're doing? Like, why would anybody want to go to this thing, you know? I did like zombie walks and zombie takeovers at places, and I'll you know, just put a call out there, hey, who wants to dress like a zombie and let's go stand on the corner of 10th and Nolana, you know? And all of a sudden we have like 50 zombies out there, like all bloody and, you know, holding signs that say HorrorCon's coming, you know? And getting kicked out of some plazas, you know, as well. And yeah, we had a con. And that's
awesome.
That's how that one was born. It was originally gonna be a Comic-Con, but since the only, I guess, dates we could get were in October, I let Jess convince me to do HorrorCon. He's my best friend, because he's super into horror. I like horror, but man, he's like in super deep, right? And he's like, you gotta do it. So anyway, that's how HorrorCon was born, and eventually I was able to do a Comic-Con, you know, when I felt the time was right and we had enough money saved up. Again, not paying myself from any of that, putting it aside to make sure that, you know, that I had money to make this work, you know. And so it was a lot of sacrifice, you know, a lot of, you know, man, you know, at one point I had to say, do I need an office or do I need an apartment, you know? You know, and my mom is like, hey, we have that, you know, spare, you know, side of the house. They have a whole side of the house that was like basically like a 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchen and a bathroom and a bedroom. And, you know, she's like, come stay over here and save that money, you know, so that you can keep your office and still do this stuff. So, you know, things like that made it, you know, made it possible.
In the comments we have, will you bring back HorrorCon? So any plans to bring it back?
What's up, Armando? Yes, there's plans to bring it back, but that one is a little difficult. Horror cons and somebody in the industry told me this one time. They're like, horror cons live and die by their guests, right? So if you don't have, you can have a Comic-Con and have okay guests and people will still come because it's a Comic-Con. A horror con, people will go for the guests, and it depends on what guests you have and which ones you can afford. And we were only bringing in, like, I guess the last couple horror cons were bringing in 2,500 people, 3,000 people maybe, which wasn't enough to pay for the guests that we were getting from The Walking Dead and, you know, all these other guests. They're, especially in October, they're super expensive. So it lost money, I guess. 2014, 2012 did good, made money. 2013 we went to 3 days, made a little bit more money, or made a little bit of money, but less than the time before that. Again, still saved it. And then the third time, that third year is when I did Gamers Expo in January. Actually, there's one before that, which is the Collectors Festival, but we'll go back to that in a bit.
This one right here?
Yeah, that's the one. But we that 2014 we did Gamers Expo, which made money. Our first Comic-Con, which made money, and that one brought in 5,000 people. And I was like, wow, dude, like you know, because for a Comic-Con, like, the whole family will come, right? But for a horror con, there's not going to be a lot of kids there. There's not going to be, it's not necessarily family friendly. So then we had another Gamers Expo, and I think that one broke even. And then we did the HorrorCon 2014, and that lost all the money that I had made that year. So all the money that I thought I had saved up, goodbye. And that's why HorrorCon went away. So all the people who are like, man, you should bring it back. I never got to go. Well, that's why it's not coming back yet. I got to rethink it, retool it, see how I can make it work, and not cost the other conventions, and not lose money, obviously. But in October, all the horror guests are quadruple the price because everybody's competing for them in October. Haunted houses want guests, other horror cons want guests, and we were basically probably the smallest running horror con, in the U.S. That had guests at the time. So the money just wasn't there to get Freddy Krueger, who wanted like $80,000, dollars, and that was back then. Now what does he want? Who knows? So, I couldn't afford all the Norman Reedus. Yeah, but he was $150,000. Like the whole show together doesn't make that. So we just couldn't get enough people there to really keep it going, and I was hoping like there would be more support. Like, okay, like as they grow, they'll get better and better people. That happened with Comic-Con, but that just wasn't happening with HorrorCon. So yeah, but I'm trying. I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, maybe in Mission, I don't know, somewhere. Maybe there's a city out there that wants to like put some funds towards it to help us make it happen. Maybe I'd entertain that. But yeah, trying to figure out how to make it happen. It was one of the funnest shows. I'd love to bring back zombie walks and stuff. Those are so much fun. But yeah, the timing isn't right with now that Anime Fiesta is in the fall. And then if I push it later, which I was hoping maybe I can do it like in December, the convention center is booked for their Christmas stuff. So can't really do anything during that time. So we'll see. I like it was one of my favorite shows for sure. Something I was super passionate about, but yeah, just couldn't get the numbers to work.
I get you. And so when you transitioned from HorrorCon, you started doing the collector festivals?
Yeah, so I did a collector. What year was that? I have that one. Busted out all my old posters. This one's signed by Booker T, Charmel Sullivan, and the first Dragon Ball Z guest to come to the Valley, Chris Sabat.
That's crazy.
Look at that handsome young man. And anyway, what's the date on this? January 3rd and 4th, but it doesn't have a year. But I'm going to assume that was 2013. So maybe. Yeah, 'cause I think Gamers Expo was 2014 in January. So that had to have been 2013 when I tried that one out. That one's another one that kind of broke even. Didn't really make money, so it didn't kind of come back either. So it was some trial and error there. Mm-hmm. Good work digging that up though.
Hey, bro, I appreciate the compliment. What was
the free time? He's got a lot of free time.
I have semi free time because the shop's not here, so it's either I work or I'm trying to create a task for myself. What was the biggest learning curve for that one? That kind of, I mean, obviously you learned from that one and you reinvested the knowledge and everything, because given your track record, right? You started advertising, you ran some events, you had a lot of transferable skills, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of got you to where you're at now. So what was the biggest takeaway from that collectors festival that you said, you know what, I'm going to axe this, I'm going to spend more time here? What was the big learning curve?
It basically became Comic-Con, It was basically the prototype, I guess, for Comic-Con. It must have been 2013. I guess it had to have been 2013 when I did it.
It was 2014.
It was 2014? Okay, so maybe... When was
we got 2015 in the chat, so I'm not sure what it was.
Let's pull it up, bro. I got a tab open right here. I got you.
Adam says it's 2015. What's up, Adam? Anyway, so it was sometime in there. That was 2014. So I guess that was kind of the prototype.
14. They're saying 14. CJ
okay, what's up, CJ? Okay,
you
so then
he took out his financial aid check.
Yeah, it was 2014. I don't want to share my personal Facebook, but it was 2014.
All right, cool. So, you know, I don't. So one of the things was look at what I was charging.
Okay.
Two
So,
days.
like, are we honoring that price now, or what's going on?
$10, dude. You know, so that's one thing. If you know, you have to, and you know, and you're gonna have people who are upset about it. But you have to charge appropriately to be able to make these things happen again. You know, and so just bringing those 3 guests down, you know, $10 wasn't enough to cover that. So, you know, had I charged $15, maybe it would have made money, you know, but I was trying to do something, you know, cheap that everybody could come to. And then very few people came. So, you know, and so I just ended up making less money, you know. So I guess that was one big takeaway, is to charge appropriately. You know, the other thing was it had a branding issue. Rio Grande Valley Collectors Festival, you know. It's a long ass freaking name. Comic-Con comes out quicker, you know. HorrorCon, Gamers Expo, you know. So it did have a branding problem as well. Chris Sabat had a big line, you know. He was real happy with the turnout. You know, Booker T not as much. I thought really he was gonna draw. I was a big Booker T fan, but he really didn't draw. He wasn't. I guess the name wasn't big enough to get people out of their chairs at home. Yeah,
Bro.
and so, but I love Booker T. And then well, his wife came because he was coming. So, but yeah, the flights, the hotels, the limos, the food, like all that stuff starts adding up, you know, and you know, people think, oh man, he's raking in the dough, man. Like all the money goes back out. Like these people are expensive, you know. So those are probably, you know, 2 of the biggest things is like charge appropriately. You know, trying to make it cheap for people. Like I thought I was doing something good for the community. But then I just ended up sabotaging it, you know. Would people have paid $15 for that? Probably. It's Chris Sabat, you know. Yeah. Would wrestling fans have paid $15 to come meet Booker T? Probably, you know. I was also selling vendors for like $100 or something like that too, you know. And the vendors.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to those prices, bro, you know.
I know, right?
Let me know first.
I will.
I'll pick the wall, bro. I got you.
And I guarantee you, it'll be the last one we do as well. But yeah, these things are expensive. But you know, I went to an anime convention in it was at the Kalahari in Round Rock, I think, and I forget what it was called. It was earlier this year, in the beginning of the year, maybe February, maybe January. Excuse me, maybe March. I don't know, somewhere in there. And so we were up there, and we're like, hey, let's go by there. And so we go to the door. They had no anime guests. They had a couple of guests that I guess maybe had driven in, like no big names, people really knew, maybe people just getting started. Their tables were empty, like no lines. But I walk up and I'm like, hey, it's a Saturday. How much is it? $70. I was like, for both? No, each. And I'm like, what? Wow, you know? And so we're over here charging, like thinking like, oh man, are people gonna get mad because it's $40, you know? You know, when we're actually bringing in celebrities and there's actual money, like a lot of money being spent on it. So, you know, to the people that are in the comments hating, is there anybody hating yet? Not yet?
No, it's actually been everything good,
man. Adam, thank you, man. Thank you for your support. You know, because there was people saying like, oh, you're charging, you know, $40, you know, at the door, and really it was $45. And I was like, man, if you only knew, like, I just came from an anime show that charged $70, and they didn't even have guests, you know, and you know, I don't know if people know how low of a price that is for what they're getting, you know. Obviously, you can go to, the bigger shows in Houston and probably pay $60-$70, and they might have like even bigger names, but we have to grow. We have to be able to kind of get there, and if we don't have people support, it's not gonna happen.
It's a community. If the community doesn't support you or they don't see the end vision, you got to be in it for the journey.
Yeah.
You can't
And
just
so-
blink your eyes and boom.
And so the difference between the Comic Con and the Horror Con is that like people wanted to bring their families to the Comic Con, but people didn't want to bring their families to the Horror Con. So if I bring it back, I have to create a show for 2,000 people that are going to show up, paying $30 each. What is that going to be able to afford me when Machete charges 40 to come? And and then the convention center charges insane prices, not like any cheaper than like what San Antonio or other places like that would charge, but we don't have the infrastructure like those big cities do. And then there's always like rich promoters that bring down Andrew Garfield.
Right, bro. I mean, I don't want to talk about what we talked about off this, but I know we had a good discussion about that one.
Yeah. I mean, when you can afford to give $3 million to charity every year, you can afford to bring Andrew Garfield, I think. So,
I'm excited for Andrew Garfield since we're going to that convention, but
yeah.
Hey,
man, I'm excited for him, dude. I'm excited to go meet him, but
we're hoping for Tom Holland, but I think wrong Spider-Man, but it'll work.
Yeah, at least we got a Spider-Man.
I was happy for Bo-Katan. I'm not even gonna lie.
Hell yeah, dude. That's some crazy stuff. But again, that's a bigger city. They have like our convention center can't even hold the 20,000 people that show up for Comic-Con. To bring people like that, you need 60,000-70,000 people to come through, or you need to be rich. And I'm not rich, and we don't have space for 60,000-70,000 people, nor do we have that kind of drawing power here in the valley.
Not yet.
Not yet, but it's growing. I mean, our first con had 1,500 people. Now we're up to like 20,000 people. So it's growing. This year would have been even bigger if that storm hadn't hit, but
we're not going to talk about that. No, but I mean, I don't want to sidetrack it from there, but I personally, from a vendor standpoint, I think the way you guys handled Saturday was good.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think we talked about it before, but I mean, it could have been worse, right?
Yeah. I mean, I got there. Convention center said, no, it's not going to happen. Go home. But there was already a line of people. You guys were already lined up in the back trying to get in. I think you had already gotten in there, and then they kicked you out back.
Yeah. Not proud of it, yeah.
And but I kind of forced their hand. I was like, look, there's at least some light. They're like, it's just the backup generators. And I was like, yeah, how long will those last? Well, like 3 days. I was like, okay, so we can't have a show. We can at least have 2 days. And we had to make some concessions, and like if for anybody who out there who doesn't know what happened, we had a power outage at the convention center after that big crazy storm with the 80-mile-per-hour winds, and that delayed our opening and then knocked out all the power except for some of the lights, and I think one air conditioning unit was still blowing, and the fire marshal, once I did convince the convention center that we could possibly make the event happen. It was go home, send everybody home, or try to salvage the event, since all the vendors traveled. Like, you guys are from here, but a lot of the vendors travel cross country to come to the show and rely on this, paycheck to get them through the month, So I felt a lot of pressure from the vendors, or not from them, but for them, to make sure they had an event to come to. All the celebrity guests, we were up all that night trying to reroute Ron Perlman and all these other guests to get here, because they were stuck in the air. Like, they couldn't land at the airport because there was no power. The storm had just hit 10 minutes before they were supposed to land. And so then they had to fly them back to Austin. And then I was calling car companies. Me and Marla were up all night trying to say, well, can they be driven down? Is there other flights? And we hadn't slept all night. And we finally were able to get them here, and we're like, okay, we hope by the time they get here, there's power at the airport. And luckily there was, by the time they got here. So now the celebrities were here, and now they were telling me we couldn't open. I was like, no, we got to try. And so The fire marshals made some concessions. He's like, hey, look, you can have 1,500 people in here at a time, no more. After that, when 10 people leave, you can let 10 people, we'll let 10 people in. And, you know, at least there was, you know, that opportunity to be able to do that until, I guess it was what, four hours later that the lights finally came back on and we were able to get everybody in and get that line in. But yeah, to the lady who commented that we obviously didn't have a plan B. No, we did not. We could not foresee an 80-mile-per-hour windy storm, you know, coming down on the valley and knocking out our power. But we did what we could to make sure the show would go on for the people who could attend it, and we refunded all the people who bought tickets who couldn't come back in, or who couldn't get in. If you didn't scan your ticket, we automatically refunded all those. And then offered, you know, you guys like that did get in on Saturday to come on Sunday again for free, so they could see like what the show should have run like, to show that we weren't, you know, amateurs. Like we, you know, did what we could.
That's true. And we got Adam coming in saying that it's affordable VIP for some of the conventions. But the VIP and everything makes it worth it.
Yeah, Dallas is like 400, 500 for VIP, something like that. We're thank you, Damien. Thank you, Adam.
So, what do you think? Since we're talking about, you know, South Texas Comic Con, what's the future for that? What are your plans for that?
For Comic Con, I mean, I'd love to keep it going, growing. I mean, we can only do so much in that convention center, and it is the biggest place that we could possibly do it. People are like, go to the arenas, but the arenas aren't made for this kind of thing. Like in the arena, I laid it out. I can only fit maybe 30 vendors on the floor, and then all that seating space is wasted. It's wasted space. There's the breakout rooms are the size of my office here. You know, there's really no way to make it happen at the arenas in the capacity that we're doing now. So what we're trying to do, and what we tried to do this year, was expand outside and start creating more events outside, maybe eventually working in the Performing Arts Center for the panels. You know, have y'all been in there? In the Performing Arts Center?
Not in a minute.
Man, it's beautiful in there. And a lot of seating, a huge stage, you know, maybe have things happening on that, you know, in that building. And then obviously all the outside stuff that was supposed to happen. Some of it did happen. We had the alpacas. We had, you know, some of the bands got to go in once the power came back on outside, and they were able to clear all the mesquite branches from all the fallen trees. Did you see how many? All the trees were knocked down.
I mean, I was there right with you. I drove around right behind you. Not on purpose.
I got there. Yeah. So you know, that's the idea, is to start expanding outward to the outside, and so once you walk into the park, you're already in Comic-Con, and there's already stuff happening before you even get inside. I think that's the only way to really grow until we get like a bigger convention center, or they add a second floor, or you know, add to the back. Hint, hint, McAllen. Give me
buy the property, please.
Yes. Give me some more space, please. We need it.
That's cool. That's cool. So, you know, one of the other projects I want to touch on, I know that you've worked on it before, was you were starting a comic book, right?
Yes, and so I've been working on it since the 90s. Eventually, started writing it like in 2019. Got it written, hired an artist, paid him half up front, and he only delivered a couple pages. And then I had to go find another artist, and he was busy doing 5 comics at the same time, but his art is amazing. So I waited it out, and it's been pretty much done since 2021. It's basically done. I want to go back and change a couple panels to make it flow better, and that's really what's been holding me up, but I haven't been able to devote the time to it. But this is the year that the Kickstarter is going to launch for it.
Nice.
And it's gonna leave out into the world, and then people will let me know if it's good or if it sucks, and we'll see from there if it's you know, if it's worthy of an issue number 2.
Hey man, just send me one here in North Dakota, man. That's all I'm gonna ask.
All right, for sure. But yeah, I should, right after Gamers Expo. That's one of the things I'm gonna concentrate on, is trying to get the Kickstarter up and going. I joined this group called Comic Launch Pro, I think is what they're called, and it's a guy who's had a lot of experience doing Kickstarters and for comics and having them successful in his secret. So I got to do his video trainings, and then before I launch it, and the idea. I want to, the comic menu, yes. Are you going to have a retailer variant option? I would really like to. I'm going to do it for Kaboom. If anybody else is interested, that would be, awesome if you would, want to have that. But I want to launch it on Kickstarter, so that, because I have the money to print the first issue, but I don't have the money to create the second issue. So, oh man, is there like a
Batman? Let me suit up. Let me suit up. I'll be back.
All right, you're gonna slide down that pole. Woo! Let's go. I don't have the money to finance issue 2 yet, and so that's the idea of the Kickstarter, is to raise the money so that we can do issue 2. But issue 1 will happen regardless. I have the money saved up already for that one to happen. I just haven't been able to sit down and really study how to do Kickstarters. I've never done a Kickstarter before.
North Dakota. Who's from I'm technically not from North Dakota. I just work here. I live in Texas though. I'm still out there. So, Amber Alert just got 2. Always an awesome show. Are you talking about me? Talking about Comic-Con there, Funko Pop and Son.
Thank you, Funko Pop and Son. Or maybe they need a thank you.
Right.
I don't know what show you're talking about. Maybe it's both. He means both.
Right.
But yeah, the comic is called My Ordinary World. And
what's the storyline? What's the plot? Give me the meat and potatoes.
You get a little rundown or something here.
So okay. So I wrote this in the 90s. The concept came in 97. And it's a guy who flips burgers, has no ambition, all of a sudden gets basically some like a magic sword and some superpowers from a tattoo, and he's kind of coerced into getting a tattoo because the chicks will dig it type of thing. Like he's like a kind of like a weakling, and and it's about him adjusting from his ordinary world into this crazy basically superpowered dimensional traveling aliens. It's like a horror sci-fi superhero, like it's every genre basically. So the idea is that every story arc is kind of like a different genre of I guess comic. And yeah, and all the kind of crazy stuff that happens. And this guy he just wants to chill, man. He just wants to play video games, play Magic, read comics. And he's working flipping burgers, and all of a sudden, like some giant beast will crash through and trying to kill him, and he's just like, what the heck, And he has this giant sword that used to belong to a giant, and now he has it. He doesn't know how to control it. It appears sometimes in his hands, and he's like, why? What is happening? He doesn't make the correlation that, hey, maybe it's the tattoo until the end of the issue. There's goblins running around the city, and this is it's like an ordinary world. Like, why is there goblins all of a sudden in the city, and giant ogres and things like that, and so he's got to kind of figure out what's happening, and there's a way bigger story kind of behind all of that. And yeah, that's kind of what happens. But it's basically like me and my best friend Jess when we were young, doing pendejadas. That's but with like superhero stuff thrown in. Yeah. Well, I was super into anime, so yeah. Actually, I had mentioned earlier that I had gone to comic conventions to try to show my portfolio with my art. I didn't draw this comic, by the way, because it would have never come out. So I hired somebody who was really good, and I was like, "You do it," because by the time I get it done, and nitpick it to death, it'll never come out. But I took my artwork to several conventions trying to get a job, and one of the guys from Marvel, he was like, "Yeah, this is looks too much like anime. The waists are too thin, the feet are too big, You know, like we're looking for. They were kind of looking for more like Jim Lee style art, more realistic at that time.
Okay.
And so Marvel turned me down. And then I went to talk to DC, and they told me, oh no, not DC, sorry, Image. Scott Dumbier, he worked for Cliffhanger, which was like one of the studios at Image, and he's like, man, this is good stuff. It's too cartoony for what from what I can tell. He's like, I'm not hiring, but I'll look at it. That's what he told me. He's like, I think you need to go stand in that line over there, and I think they'll give you a job. And I was like, what line is that? He's like, that's Archie Comics. And I was like, Archie? And I grabbed my stuff and I, huffed out of there. I was like, Archie, I'm not going to draw for Archie, all mad, when, it would have basically been my foot in the door. But because of my, ego, I want to draw X-Men. I want to draw Spider-Man. I want to draw Cable, I want to draw all that stuff. And they were like, yeah, it's too cartoony. And then so that was the last one, I think, that I had gone to. And I kind of gave up on that. So with DC, I was there was an artist named Mike Waringo, and he used to draw The Flash and Fantastic Four and a lot of other stuff. He passed away, but I met him at a convention in Houston, and he was like, and he's cartoony. His stuff was super cartoony. Like you would think you're looking like at a animated cartoon or something, right? With a little manga anime mixed in. And so he was drawing Flash, and he was one of my, inspirations. So I was telling him, what I was being told, and he's like, oh man, I'm gonna send you to my editor. And the editor's name was Kevin Dooley. And he was the editor on Green Lantern at the time and The Flash. And so he put me in contact with him. Email had, was a new thing, AOL, so I was shooting images to him or messages to him, and he's like, okay, mail me some stuff. And I'd send it, and he'd like circle things like, hey, work on this. Hey, not enough background. Hey, more rendering, more shading. And and then he'd send it back, and, he's like, okay, send me more stuff. I'd send more stuff. He's like, okay, I think you're ready. I'm going to send you a sample script. And if you can do the sample script, then, we might have a place for you. And then I got my girlfriend pregnant, and I never did those sample pages, So anyway, that's how I stopped. Never made it into comics. But I don't regret it. Pause. I would do it all over again. Yeah, it was just on pause. Like, I love my kids. My kids are amazing. And I don't regret it at all. But it led me down this path, and I can't say it's been bad at all.
That's awesome. So, given the fact, and, obviously we could talk about your accolades probably all night, You got Comic-Con, you got this comic, you got your band, got a lot of stuff I can't really... I could list it all, but I don't know if I'm gonna have enough memory. But with all these projects going on, man, how do you balance it? Like, do you ever find yourself just stressed out? Do you think you have too many projects at once? How do you prioritize them? What do you do?
So I definitely have too many projects at once, but they don't stress me out. It's what I do for stress relief. They're hobbies, and the hobbies are what keep me sane, I think. Writing music with my friends, playing music every Tuesday and Thursday. I have band practice here in about 20 minutes. But,
we got you, bro. We got you.
But they're probably out there drinking claws. Like, hey, where's this guy? They always make me wait so they can wait. But it's cathartic, writing things. I was writing a comic with JDF that might never see the light of day, but it was fun. It's creating. I love creating things. I wanna write movies. I wanna join those 24-hour film races. There's a lot of more things that I want to do, but I don't find them stressful because I love doing them. And it's the same with Kaboom. Yeah, it can be super stressful, right? But the conventions, okay, that's I love doing it, but man, dude, that's why I'm super pelon, dude. I was pelon before that, but it's super stressful. But at the end of the day, like, I have all these other things that I do, for that stress relief. I need to hit the gym too, dude. That's what I gotta do, dude. I'm sure that's good. Getting the aggravation out, but but yeah, it's not stressful. How do I make time? Everything has its and so here's why the comic hasn't come out, and things like that. It's because I have moods, right? Sometimes I'm like in the mood for writing, sometimes I'm in the mood for drawing, sometimes in the mood for making music, so sometimes other things take priorities, and eventually I'll come back to this other thing. And hence it's been a few years, 3 years since I started writing this comic again, and getting it drawn out and everything. I guess it was 2018 when I hired the first artist. But yeah, it's just time. There's not enough time, and so what I do is I weave in and out of my passions. And sometimes it's time to make music, and I'm like, hey guys, like let's play some shows, let's do this or that. Or sometimes I'm like, hey, let's chill out a little bit, I gotta do this other thing. But yeah, there's a million things. I love building lightsabers. I love building freaking lightsabers out of lightsaber parts and doing the electronics and all that kind of stuff. So I did that for like a month. Around December, January. But yeah, it's definitely too many projects. Obviously, the ones that pay the bills are the priorities. All the rest I kind of weave in and out of, and that's what kind of keeps me sane.
That's good. So before we sign off here, Ramsey, do you have any advice for anybody trying to mimic your footsteps? I mean, the biggest thing that I've always seen, I'm pretty sure you've seen it too. We got a lot of other small businesses opening up. Some of them try to grow too fast. Some of them try to grow too slow, right?
Yeah.
So for all those little small businesses that are probably watching that are still on with us this whole time, any words of advice, any words of encouragement, anything that you want to leave?
Definitely. I mean, I hate to think that I'm going to give people advice and then they go and do something and it doesn't work out for them. And I really don't want that for anybody. But if you do want something and you want it bad enough, you need to work hard to make sure it happens. Very few things are handed to anybody. I've never had anything handed to me. Obviously, my family, I have a great family. I had a great upbringing, so I had that as a big plus, But some of my friends didn't, and they're still, succeeding, despite the odds. But all I can say is that if you want something bad enough, you're gonna have to figure out how to make it happen. If you see it's not working, change, pivot. If if everybody around you thinks, hey, this is stupid, it might be stupid. But if it's something you absolutely want and, realistically you think you can make happen, if you work hard enough and surround yourself with the right people, then it is definitely possible. And if you have an artist mentality, I want to be like you when I lose weight.
Jesus. Jesus. That's funny. That's great.
And it's there's, like I said, Saturday, that Friday night to Saturday. Friday went so seamless at Comic-Con. Everything went seamless. There was like 20 to 25% growth from the previous Friday, from the year before. Everything was going great. I was coming back from the store with a bottle of water, back to the hotel room, and I get this notification that said, hey, 80-mile-per-hour winds. I was like, what? I can't be here. And then I stepped a foot into my hotel room, and all of a sudden, bam, it hit. And, it made things crazy. And from there on, there was no sleep. As it was, there was very little sleep that week leading into the event to make sure it happened. But you just got to suck it up. I sucked it up. That morning, there was no light in the stairs. I tumbled all the way down the freaking stairs. I hurt my neck. I sprained my foot. I hurt my shoulder. The guy like looked into the stairwell like, what the hell? The hotel guy. And I was like, oh man, I just ate it, dude. And he just closed it. Anyway, I was still out there walking around. I was still out there trying to do it. Nobody was gonna stop me from trying to make this event happen. And if you kind of take that attitude with anything you want to do, it should be possible. I don't know everybody's circumstances, but if you work hard at something, and you work it long enough, it should eventually work. If you're being smart about it. That's the
For
other
sure.
thing. Be smart about it.
That's true. Fred, what's the company saying, Fred? What's the company saying?
Company saying, scared money make no money.
There you go. Yeah, scared money. Don't make money, and and like I always say, work it till it works.
No.
And it's not always gonna be easy. You might have to hold down 2 jobs. You might have to teach art at IDEA, for several years to pay your employees. So that's just how it works. But you have to have obviously a means of support. And for me, it was websites and advertising, and that's how I kept myself going, so that I could do it. So definitely don't quit your day job until you feel it's right, or you feel like, hey, if I just had more time and I could do this, I could do it well and make money off of it. But yeah, I don't want to give anybody any hopeless dreams either, but if you want something bad enough, work it till it works.
No, work it till it works. I like that. So, thank you again, Ramsey, for joining us. So, for all you know, the next big event we got Ultra Gaming Expo coming in the McAllen Convention Center, right? June 3rd, right?
Yeah, Saturday, June 3rd
So,
at the convention center.
Fred,
So-
are we going to be there, Fred, or no?
We will be there.
Oh, we're going to be there.
Awesome. We just I just made space for about 7 more vendors, 7 or 8, maybe something like that. I was able to consolidate some space in the gaming area. Apparently, I had miscalculated how much it was, how much square footage it was. So I was able to add some more vendors. So all the people that are hitting me up asking for more space, well, I did it.
Nice. Very good.
Where can we follow and how can we support? Cool, man. I mean, shoot. If you want to support the comic, there is, if you go to Facebook, Marinary World Comic, I haven't updated in a while, but it will start to be updated after Gamers Expo or Ultra Gaming Expo. And yeah, if the convention, South Texas Comic-Con.com, ultragamingexpo.com, animefiesta.net. I think that was a .net. Maybe it's .com. Any of the Facebook, social medias, Comic Menu. Thank you, man. If you see the Marinary World Kickstarter and the art, strikes your fancy, yeah, Funko Pop and Son, I know you'll be there. Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, any of those places, come to the shows. That's the biggest support, that we can get. Shop at the Collector, shop at Kaboom. Hit up all the local spots for pop culture. Keep that alive if that's what you're into. Yeah, I mean, don't be a dick.
Bro, 100%. Hey, I don't want to be that guy, bro, but I'm gonna put it out here on the podcast. We may or may not have had several people asking if we were a ticket outlet. Just throwing it out there.
Hey, if you want to be a ticket outlet, let's go, man. It might be
everyone
too
was
late
like-
for Ultra, but for the other ones, I'm totally down, dude. It's just you just gotta hit me up. We'll set it up. You gotta come pick up the tickets. There's you guys sell them and then you bring back the thing at a certain date. We usually, to be able to count it and see where we're at, we usually stop pre-sale tickets like the Wednesday before or something like that, or the Monday before.
Yeah,
But if you want to be a ticket outlet, I'm totally down. More ticket outlets, the better, dude. The more tickets I sell, I'm not
getting slammed, bro.
greedy.
Slammed with it, like closer to the expo.
Yeah.
They're like, "Are you?" I said, "I'm sorry, no." I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like,
just remind me, dude. I'll totally I'm totally down, dude. The more ticket outlets we have, the better.
I didn't
and
mean
yeah,
to put
hopefully
you
we
on
can
the
keep.
spot,
No, hopefully we can keep this thing growing, and eventually we'll have Tom Holland at Comic Con.
go.
Yeah, the more tickets we sell, the better. So if y'all want to be a ticket outlet, I'd appreciate it for sure.
Very good. All right. Well,
We have
that's
none in Edinburgh, so that's perfect.
Even better. We're gonna wrap it up, man. I don't want to take any more of your time to get everything going. I appreciate your time, man. Hopefully we can do this again. I mean, maybe
Hey, for
closer to
sure, man. For
Anime
sure.
Fest or next Comic Con. We don't know what's in the future, right?
Totally down. Hey, Marinary World Comic coming soon, so maybe whenever
there
you
you
want to
go.
have me, dude.
That's very good, very good. So, besides that, we got Kaboom Comics in McAllen and Westico. We got Anime Boom also in McAllen.
Yeah.
Where the old Pet World used to be, PetSmart? No, Myth Adventures. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's we took over the T-Mobile building.
Oh, T-Mobile.
But yeah,
right?
it's in there. Yeah, next to the Flux. Yeah.
Yeah, next to
There
the
you
Flux,
go,
right?
there you go.
Very true. I
Go
forgot.
get your bubble tea.
Yeah,
Go
Bubble
get it.
Bomb. We got Bubble Bomb there. What else do I do? My band, 40 Caliber Kids.
When's your next performance for 40 Caliber Kids? Where can they get you?
Oh man, I think, man, I don't know, dude.
Follow their Facebook, guys.
Yeah, 40 Caliber Kiss. Check us out on Spotify if you like, rock, heavy rock, with influence from 80s to, I don't know, to modern stuff. All originals. Check it out. And thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you guys for joining.
All right, everybody has a good night, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.